The early 90s, back when couch co-op gaming ruled and nothing beat gathering your friends to button mash your way through hordes of enemies on your favorite console. Released in 1991 for the Sega Genesis, Golden Axe 2 was the highly anticipated follow-up to the original Golden Axe, a game that set the standard for side-scrolling beat-em-ups. The game was developed by Sega, and while it didn't reinvent the wheel, it refined an already beloved formula, offering fans more of what they loved: brutal combat, high fantasy, and a chance to save the world again from a dark and powerful evil. Though Golden Axe 2 was initially met with mixed reviews, especially from those hoping for a massive leap forward in gameplay mechanics, the game still holds a special place in the hearts of retro gamers. This was the era where simplicity was a virtue, and Golden Axe 2 stayed true to what worked: tight combat mechanics, satisfying enemy takedowns, and of course, those classic magic attacks that brought some serious heat to the battlefield. For any gamer who grew up in the 90s or anyone revisiting the past now, Golden Axe 2 is a prime example of how beat-em-ups could blend action with just enough strategy to keep things engaging. Plus, with the option for two-player cooperative gameplay, it was the perfect game for friendly couch competition or teaming up against a common foe. With that iconic Genesis sound chip backing up the sword-swinging action, it became one of those must-play games that drew in arcade fans and home console warriors alike. The story of Golden Axe 2 picks up not long after the hero's victory over Death Adder in the original game. Peace had returned to the land of Uria, and its people were able to live free from the tyranny of dark forces, at least for a while. But, as is common in tales of high fantasy, evil is never truly vanquished. From the shadows emerges a new villain, Dark Gould, a malevolent sorcerer with ambitions to conquer Uria and drown it in chaos. His power rivals that of Death Adder, and with his resurrection comes an army of grotesque creatures and merciless warriors, intent on spreading fear across the land. Dark Gould seizes the titular Golden Axe, the legendary symbol of peace and power, using it to fuel his dark ambitions and strike terror into the hearts of Uria's people. Once again, the fate of the kingdom hangs in the balance, and only 3 brave warriors can stand against this rising evil. These are the same heroes from the original game, each with their own reasons to join the fight and put an end to Dark Gould's reign of terror. First, there's Axe Battler, the brooding barbarian who wields a mighty broadsword. After the death of his family at the hands of Dark Gould's forces, his motivation to restore peace to Uria runs deep. He represents the classic lone wolf archetype, fighting not only for justice but for personal revenge. His physical strength is unmatched, and though he's skilled in swordsmanship, he also has access to earth-based magic, allowing him to summon destructive forces from the ground to crush his enemies. Next is Tyrus Flare, the fierce and agile Amazon warrior. Tyrus, the sole survivor of a village that was annihilated by dark magic, has a deep personal vendetta against the forces of evil that have plagued her homeland for so long. Wielding a longsword, she combines speed and deadly precision in combat. Tyrus is also a master of fire magic, summoning devastating infernos and mythical creatures like dragons to rain fiery destruction on her enemies. She fights with the fury of someone who's lost everything but still holds hope that Uria can be saved from destruction. Finally, we have Gilius Thunderhead, the battle-hardened dwarf who's just as tough as the axe he swings. A veteran of countless battles, Gilius fights with the wisdom of experience and the strength of a seasoned warrior. His brother was killed in battle against Death Adder's forces, and now, Gilius fights to ensure that no more innocents fall to Dark Gould's army. His mastery of thunder magic allows him to summon storms and lightning strikes, devastating anyone who dares to stand in his way. Though shorter than the other warriors, Gilius's spirit is larger than life, making him a fan favorite. Despite its simplicity, Golden Axe 2 captures the essence of what makes fantasy storytelling so compelling: a looming dark force, unlikely heroes, and a battle that could change the fate of the world. The plot may not be overly complex, but it provides the perfect backdrop for the action-packed gameplay. There's a sense of epic adventure woven through every stage of the game, driving players to push through each battle, and making that final confrontation with Dark Gould all the more satisfying. By the time you reach the game's climax, you feel as if you've truly journeyed through Uria, fighting tooth and nail alongside these iconic warriors, inching closer to victory with every hard-fought battle. The simple but effective narrative lets the player feel the weight of the stakes without getting in the way of the fast-paced, beat-em-up action that the Golden Axe series is famous for. At the heart of Golden Axe 2 lies its fast-paced, side-scrolling beat-em-up gameplay, which captures everything fans loved about the original but with some added refinements. Sega's development team didn't stray far from the core mechanics that made the first Golden Axe such a classic. Instead, they built upon it to deliver a more polished experience. The game keeps its formula simple, but that's exactly what made it so engaging back in the day, and what continues to keep it fun for retro gamers today. In Golden Axe 2, players control one of three characters: Axe Battler, Tyrus Flare, or Gilius Thunderhead. Each warrior has their own fighting style and magical abilities, which adds variety to the combat experience. The game is designed around co-op play, where two players can take on hordes of enemies together, although you can certainly tackle the game solo if you're feeling brave. The teamwork in co-op mode, with each player bringing different skills to the table, made the game particularly fun for friends looking to coordinate their attacks and magic use for maximum destruction. The controls are simple and responsive. Each character has basic attacks with their weapon of choice. Axe Battler wields a sword, Tyrus slashes through enemies with a longsword, and Gilius swings his mighty axe. On top of that, each warrior can pull off a running attack by double tapping forward, or even launch a powerful back attack to deal with enemies coming from behind. These mechanics may feel straightforward, but they're satisfying and well-tuned, making combat feel fluid and responsive. It's all about timing your hits and dodging out of the way when enemies try to overwhelm you, and Golden Axe 2 strikes a nice balance between chaotic action and strategic play. Where Golden Axe 2 really shines, though, is in its magic system, which was one of the standout features of the original game. Magic in Golden Axe 2 isn't just a secondary tool, it's a game changer. Each character has access to a unique type of magic. Axe Battler controls earth, Tyrus Flare controls fire, and Gilius Thunderhead commands thunder, and these abilities can be leveled up throughout the game by collecting blue magic potions. The more potions you collect, the stronger your spell becomes, and let's be honest, watching a massive screen-filling spell wipe out an entire wave of enemies is one of the most satisfying moments in the game. Tyrus Flare, in particular, can summon an enormous fire-breathing dragon at her highest magic level, making her a fan favorite for players who love dishing out maximum magical damage. Another key feature that made Golden Axe 2 stand out in the beat-em-up genre was the use of Bizarrians, rideable creatures that act like temporary power-ups. Early in the game, players can knock enemies off their mounts and claim them for their own. These creatures range from tail-whipping dragons to fire-breathing beasts, and while you're mounted, your attacks gain extra reach and power. However, the challenge comes in keeping control of your mount, as enemies will constantly try to knock you off and steal it back. Mastering the use of Bizarrians can give players a big advantage in tough battles, and adds an extra layer of fun to the combat. At the end of the day, Golden Axe 2 may not have revolutionized the genre, but its combination of hack-and-slash action, memorable characters, and that oh-so-satisfying magic system cemented it as a must-play title for Genesis fans. It's the kind of game that rewards players who stick with it, learning the nuances of each character and how best to use their magic in the heat of battle. When it comes to Golden Axe 2, the game's graphics and sound played a pivotal role in creating an immersive high fantasy world that captured the imagination of early 90s gamers. Though the game may not have pushed the boundaries of the Sega Genesis hardware, like some of its contemporaries, it nonetheless delivered a visual and auditory experience that perfectly suited the gritty, medieval atmosphere of the series. The combination of its detailed pixel art and atmospheric sound design made Golden Axe 2 an iconic part of Sega's 16-bit era. At first glance, Golden Axe 2 doesn't look radically different from its predecessor. The developers at Sega clearly took an "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" approach to the visuals, which was both a blessing and a limitation. The character sprites in Golden Axe 2 are slightly larger and more detailed than in the first game, giving the three protagonists a more defined look. The backgrounds and environments in Golden Axe 2 are classic high fantasy, depicting a variety of landscapes from crumbling ruins and haunted forests to winding caverns and eerie castles. Though the level design itself is linear, the attention to detail in the backgrounds helps bring the world of Uria to life. The pixel art is colorful but muted, in keeping with the game's dark tone, and there's a definite improvement in the texture and depth of the stages when compared to the original. One of the standout graphical elements in Golden Axe 2 is the magic effects. Each character's magic attack has been given a serious visual upgrade from the first game, especially at higher levels. Tiras Flair's fire magic is the most impressive, summoning fiery dragons that stretch across the screen, belching flames that engulf everything in sight. Gilius Thunderhead's lightning strikes are similarly satisfying, with bolts of energy that zap enemies with a burst of bright, eye-catching animation. The screen-filling magic effects were one of the graphical highlights of the game, adding a sense of power and excitement every time you unleashed a full magic attack. Now, let's talk about the sound, one of the most memorable aspects of Golden Axe 2. The game's soundtrack was composed by Naofumi Hataya, who had worked on other Sega titles, and he delivered a score that perfectly complements the action and atmosphere of the game. Golden Axe 2's music is driven by the Sega Genesis's distinctive sound chip, which gives it that unmistakable 90s vibe that many retro gamers will instantly recognize. The soundtrack leans heavily into high fantasy themes, with brooding, heroic melodies and tense battle-ready rhythms that underscore every stage. Each level has its own distinct track, helping to set the mood as players progress through the game. For example, the opening stages are accompanied by powerful, energetic music that sets the tone for a grand adventure. As players advance, the music becomes more ominous and intense, particularly during boss fights, where the stakes are high and the rhythmic pounding drums and eerie synth lines get your adrenaline pumping. One of the standout tracks is the boss theme, which combines a sense of urgency with a creeping, menacing melody that tells you this fight is going to be tough. The music never overwhelms the action, but instead enhances the atmosphere, making each battle feel like a struggle between good and evil in the heart of a magical war-torn land. While Golden Axe 2 may not have pushed the Sega Genesis to its technical limits in terms of graphics or sound, it achieved something even more important. It created a cohesive audio-visual experience that transported players to the world of Urea. The detailed pixel art, explosive magic effects, and atmospheric soundtrack worked together to make every swing of your weapon and every step through its world feel like part of an epic quest. It's no wonder that so many retro gamers hold fond memories of the game's visuals and sound. It captured the essence of 90s gaming and wrapped it in a package that still holds up today. To fully appreciate the legacy of Golden Axe 2, you have to look at the context in which it was released. The early 90s were a hotbed for beat-em-ups, with titles like Final Fight, Streets of Rage, and Double Dragon dominating arcades and home consoles. Golden Axe had already made a name for itself as one of the best in the genre with its 1989 arcade release, followed by a successful port to the Sega Genesis. Fans were eager for more hack-and-slash fantasy action, and Sega delivered with Golden Axe 2. Though Golden Axe 2 didn't reinvent the genre, it polished what worked in the first game. The combat was smoother, the magic system was more refined, and the visuals were sharper. This refinement was crucial for its long-term appeal. It wasn't trying to be something radically new, but rather a better version of what fans already loved. This approach helped Golden Axe 2 cement itself as a go-to game for Sega Genesis owners, especially those who loved playing cooperatively with friends. The emphasis on couch co-op gameplay is one of the reasons the game has endured. There's something timeless about grabbing a buddy, picking your character, and bashing your way through hordes of enemies together. While Golden Axe 2 was never the massive hit that Sonic the Hedgehog or Street Fighter 2 became, its impact can still be felt today in the way it influenced the beat-em-up genre. The magic system, in particular, was something that set the game apart from other titles at the time. It added a layer of strategy to the otherwise simple gameplay, forcing players to decide when to hold on to their magic for tougher battles and when to unleash it to clear out waves of enemies. Over the years, Golden Axe 2 has seen several re-releases and has been included in various Sega compilations. This has kept the game accessible to new generations of gamers who weren't around for its original release. It's featured in collections like Sega Genesis Classics and has been ported to modern platforms such as the PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, and Steam, allowing a whole new audience to experience the magic of Golden Axe 2. Ultimately, the legacy of Golden Axe 2 is one of staying power. It wasn't the flashiest or most innovative game of its time, but it didn't need to be. By building on the strengths of the original Golden Axe and delivering a polished, engaging experience, it earned a place in the pantheon of great retro games. For many, it represents an era when games didn't need sprawling narratives or complex mechanics to be fun. Just a sword, some magic, and a world to save.